This morning I woke up to wonderful news that one of our members, Bob Kraft, organized the purchase of 1.7 million masks from China, the coveted N95 masks. And then not only did he spend millions of dollars to buy these masks, but he sent his own Patriots plane to China, refitted it to be able to load all of these masks, to bring them back to Boston, to Massachusetts for the state of Massachusetts, but also to send 300,000 masks to New York City because they were so hard hit in New York. I wasn't surprised, knowing Bob Kraft as our member, the mensch he is, par excellence, always doing the right thing to help other people, one of the most compassionate people. It didn't surprise me that he did this, but I was overjoyed to see how he took such a dark situation and created so much light and so much optimism and so much hope for people, and showed us all what we're supposed to do during these times that are so difficult. You know, as we prepare for Passover, one of the things we need at the Seder table, of course, is the maror, the bitter herbs. And of course, the bitter herbs reminds us of the bitter times that our ancestors suffered in Egypt. As the verse says, "Vayimararu et chayehem," that they embittered the lives of the Jewish people. But here's an interesting question. You know, we not only eat maror now, but on the very night that the Jews prepared to go out of Egypt, which was the first Paschal offering and Passover Seder, on the eve of the 15th of Nisan, on the night before the Jews were redeemed, they sat down to eat the very first Seder, Paschal offering. And then and there, in Egypt, they were commanded, al matzot umerorim yochlu, to eat the Paschal lamb with the matzah, the unleavened bread, and with the maror, the bitter herbs. And the question is, we understand why we have to eat the maror, to remember the suffering of our ancestors, the bitter times they endured in Egypt during slavery and persecution, and their babies being thrown in the Nile. But why would the Jews who were still sitting in the land of Egypt, still as slaves, unyet redeemed, need to eat the maror? What did they have to remember? They were experiencing the maror. They were still in slavery. Why would God command them in Egypt to eat the maror? And here we have an interesting answer. You know, the law is, and this is a law that we have to remember on the night of Passover, if a person swallows the matzah, he has still fulfilled the obligation of eating matzah on the night of Passover. But if you swallow the maror, you have not fulfilled the obligation. So says Jewish law. Why? Because the whole point of the maror is to feel the bitterness. Why? Because sometimes feeling bitterness could be a positive experience. You know, everyone is feeling frustration now. Everyone is feeling a sense of sadness about what's going on. But sometimes frustration and sadness could be a catalyst, could be a motivation, could be a calling to create a greater light in our lives. And that is what God was showing the Jewish people. The reason they were going out of Egypt was because they never got depressed. You see, depression is numbness, where you don't feel anything. You just fall into a dark hole of despair. Frustration means you're not content, you're frustrated, and you're trying to do something to change it. And therefore, the Jews in Egypt were never depressed. They were crying out to God constantly, pleading with God. And God heard the cries of the Jewish people because they were not numb. They were filled with conviction and faith that God would take them out of Egypt, and they kept on turning their eyes towards heaven, asking God for the redemption. And that's why they merited to go free. And that's why God says, I want you to eat the maror on the night of Passover before you leave Egypt, because you should remember this lesson, that the reason you're going out free from Egypt is because you never gave up hope. You never lost your faith in God and your faith in your own ability to bring about the redemption. And you showed that throughout the 210 years of slavery, where you constantly prayed and cried out to God for redemption. And I think this is so instructive for the times we're in now. We should never fall into gloom and doom and depression, no matter how difficult things are. We should turn this challenge, we should turn this frustration, we should turn this bitterness, this maror in our lives to a deeper connection to God, a deeper calling out to God, and reaching out to our fellow man with acts of compassion to show that we have faith in our common humanity, and we will prevail, and we will transcend this challenge, and we will come out of this as our ancestors came out of Egypt. And that's what Bob Kraft showed us. He showed us that this is the time to perform the greatest humanitarian efforts, and this will not only help all the medical professionals and those who need masks, but it gave a boost of confidence, of faith, of a sense of optimism to everyone who heard the news, especially those who know him here in Palm Beach as the wonderful, kind, compassionate person he is, that together, if everyone pitches in, some can do more than others, but everyone can do something. And if we pull together, we'll get out of this stronger and better than ever before. Conclude with a true story that after the Yom Kippur War in 1973, Rabbi Israel Me'alau, who later went on to be the chief rabbi of Israel, came to visit the Lubavitcher Rebbe in Brooklyn, New York. And the Rebbe asked Rabbi Lau about the mood in Israel. And Rabbi Lau said to the Lubavitcher Rebbe that everyone is going around and asking, Was ved sein, which in Yiddish means they're asking, what will be? What will be? As we know, in 1973, Israel experienced unprecedented losses and tragedy. And there was a sense of heaviness, of darkness, of gloom over Israel. And Jews were asking, Was ved sein, what will be? And the Lubavitcher Rebbe looked at Rabbi Lau and says, A Yid fragt nicht was wird sein. A Yid, a Jew, never asks what will be. A Yid fragt, a Jew asks, Was wird min tun? What will we do? The question of the hour is not what will be. The question is, what will you and I do? Thank you, Bob Kraft, for showing us what we can do, for being that example. Now each and every one of us should go out and do our part, and collectively all of our millions and billions of good deeds will create such a powerful light that will overwhelm the darkness and transform the actual darkness that we're in into a greater and brighter light than ever. Have a wonderful day.